on patrol with the Royal Marines in Kosovo.
Since August, the men and officers of 4-5 Commando of the Royal Marines based at Commando near Arbroath have been the cornerstone of the UN's mission to bring peace and stability to Pristina, the capital city of Kosovo, Europe's most volatile trouble spot. More than a year after the NATO bombing campaign in the former Yugoslavia, 4-5 Commandos stand between the two sides in the aftermath of a bloody ethnic war in the Balkan region. On the one hand, they're trying to protect the defeated and vulnerable minority Serb population who still live in Pristina, while also attempting to temper the bitterness felt by the native Kosovo Albanians who suffered years of intimidation, persecution and often torture at the hands of the Serbs. The scars of the war and the 70-day bombardment can still be seen around Pristina and throughout the troubled country. The tours of duty 4-5 Commando have performed in Northern Ireland during the Troubles have been good training for their role in Pristina. But unlike the streets of Ulster, the Marines are not the targets of the extremists and terrorists operating out with the mainstream political process. Their presence is welcomed by most ordinary Albanians and Serbs alike. 4-5 are part of the NATO-led peacekeeping force KFOR. They support the work of the United Nations mission in Kosovo Police, known as UNMIK. The aim of the mission, to restore peace and stability.
It's absolutely key that we are seen to be impartial and the friends of all elements of society. We work extremely hard to do that, both with the Albanians and also with a small number of Serbs and the other ethnic minorities. Absolutely essential that we maintain their trust and prove to them that we're impartial and supporting the development of democracy here in Kosovo.
Hello Zero, this is a Bravo 30 Charlie. I have effected entry to a Sierra 7 and I'm continuing the search now.
An early morning search operation in northern Pristina. As part of their role, troops are searching for weapons and ammunition.
We've been looking for any form of criminal activity. More precisely, we've been looking to find some kind of weapons find. Obviously, it's a surprise to them when we go in there at 6:30 in the morning and ask to search their property. But we've got our own interpreters out with them, and they realise we are here to provide a safe, secure environment. And part of that is trying to clamp down on criminal activity. So, although not overjoyed, as you'd expect in this sort of time in the morning, we have had no problems so far.
What you quite often find is a lot of people in Kosovo will just have weapons as a matter of course. They might not have any criminal intent with those weapons, but they're just left over from the war, maybe even souvenirs. But it's obviously our job to disarm the population in that way. So quite often they're not dangerous people or bad people, but you'll still find things in their houses when you conduct the search.
It's almost 8:30 in the morning and 4-5 Commando Zulu Company are halfway through a search operation in the outskirts of Pristina. It's jointly led by the United Nations Police, and it comes after intelligence suggesting that there might have been weapons and ammunition stashed at this house. So far, as I say, halfway through the operation, only a limited amount of ammunition and weapons has been found. But at a house just half a mile away, search teams have more success, uncovering a substantial quantity of weapons at the home of a suspected arms dealer.
quite a considerable find. We had good in on this building that he may be dealing in arms. This is quite large. Normally a household probably have maybe one weapon as a security weapon, but this is considerable, and obviously, as you can see, most of the weapons here are brand new, so obviously he's dealing in those weapons. The accused will be taken away, the evidence will be gathered, and then no doubt he'll be taken to court, and it'll be UNMIG that actually led on this operation, and they'll follow it up.
Have you got a case number already?
Yeah.
Was that
While the Marines search the building, United Nations police officers gather evidence. Ultimately, it's they who decide whether anyone should be prosecuted. The UNMIG police force is made up of contingents from 51 different countries. It's a sometimes awkward mix. Here, an officer on detachment from the Royal Ulster Constabulary works alongside a Canadian sergeant and the local Kosovo police service.
As the civilian police, our role is to assist the K4 units in the event that evidence or persons may be required to be arrested. We would then fulfill the police mandate by taking over that portion of the investigation. But we work here as an assistance to and in conjunction with the British K4 forces in this particular operation, or in a different area, any K4 unit.
I assume for civilian police officers like yourself, this sort of environment is totally different to what you've known before.
Well, it's certainly very different and unique in its own way. It's not Canada, certainly. But it's an exciting time, a great time of opportunity, and a great challenge, and a time to give some help to people.
The problems faced by 4-5 Commando as they patrol the streets of Pristina are complex and varied. Organised crime, intimidation and racketeering are widespread. With millions of pounds of international aid being pumped into Kosovo, the black market has become king. Many parts of Pristina appear westernised, but the day-to-day running of the city has all but broken down. Rubbish is left lying around to rot, electricity bills go unpaid, and there's no record of birth, deaths or marriages.
Despite the efforts of K4, the United Nations Police and the newly formed Kosovo Police Service, Pristina is in most sense of the words a lawless society. It's generally accepted the crime problem won't be solved overnight, and therefore the more serious crimes such as drunks, prostitution and organised crime are being targeted, while less serious crimes such as car theft are reluctantly ignored.
In the heart of Pristina lies the notorious crime-ridden Dardania housing estate. 20,000 people live in these high-rise blocks, known locally as the Green Flats. The Dardania tunnel runs underneath. It was here Serbian tanks would shelter, as night after night US Tomahawk missiles rained down on the city. .45 Commando have made a major impact in making the estate a safer place to stay.
With this estate, it was the sort of hotspot of the whole area. Everything, all the crime in the area seemed to centre around the Dardania estate here. There was 3 deaths, 2 murders within a few hundred metres, this location we're in at the moment. So we really had to get to grips with things here pretty sharpish. So we've got the observation post up here that overlooks the whole area behind me and over to the other side there. That keeps an eye on the whole area, and there's patrols on the ground. So as soon as the OP sees something starting to build up, he can get a patrol to get right to that area and clamp down on things. So since we arrived, we've seen a decrease, you know, of I think well over 50% I've heard mentioned, but it's gone totally down to nothing. You know, from being a real hot spot, it's down to a really safe area now. You can see with the kids playing behind me there, and hopefully that will continue on throughout the tour now.
We've provided additional patrolling. We've provided what we call observation posts on the tops of the blocks of flats. And we very much tried to encourage the individuals who live there to pass us information. Very important. We can do only so much. We need the help of the population. And so the building of trust between the members of 4-5 Commando and all the elements of people who live in the city has been a very important factor in improving the situation and getting them to help us.
I think they're pretty tolerant of K4 out here. I've had no bad feeling off any particular locals, but I think they know if we weren't here, things could be worse.
The ordinary people of Dardania seem relieved that K4 and 4-5 Commando have done so much to take on the criminals who were making their lives such a misery.
The facilities are great here. They've been providing many things here which the children of this area didn't have before.
You feel safer?
100%.
In a matter of months, the population of Pristina has trebled to 600,000 people. Rural Albanians have been flooding into the city, while only 700 Serbs now live in Pristina. Ironically, it's now they who need the protection of 4-5 Commando. Marines mount a 24-hour guard on this Serbian church in the centre of Pristina. The majority of people in Kosovo want full independence from Serbia. They have some autonomy from the former Yugoslav Republic, but aren't recognised yet as a separate state. The church is seen as a symbol of Serb rule and oppression. If not protected, it would almost certainly be destroyed.
Well, just to see if you're okay, have you had any more visits?
Yes.
Yes, you have.
In Dardania, Corporal Laird's patrol visits a Serbian household in a predominantly Albanian area. The family have been imprisoned in their home for over a year, fearful that if they leave, they will be attacked. Once in the house, they immediately seem uneasy with her presence and become suspicious. The visit is cut short. The woman later telephones an emergency hotline to a local police station, fearing that we were an Albanian TV crew.
We're only checking if you're okay, if everything is okay.
Yes.
Despite the understandable uneasiness which still exists in Pristina, the stabilising influence of 4-5 Commando and K4 appear to at last be having an impact. But just 24 hours later, that fragile peace was shattered, and Kosovo was once again thrown into crisis.
This Christmas L'Air du Temps de Toilette is $9.99 and Cerruti 1881 aftershave is $12.79. We've hundreds of low prices every minute of every day at Semichem.
The closer you get, the better you look, baby. The better you look, the more I want you. When you turn on your smile, I feel my heart go wild. I'm like a child with a brand new toy, and I get the sweetest feeling, honey, the sweetest.
Do you intend coming home at all hours?
You're being a bit harsh.
No, I'm not. It's important.
It's just a can.
No, don't trust it.
Lamborghini girls, just want to have fun.
Early on the morning of the 22nd of November, a bomb explodes at the home of the Serbian ambassador in Pristina. The blast killed a bodyguard and injured 3 others. The ambassador, who was upstairs asleep at the time, escaped uninjured. Patrols from 4-5 Commando were among the first on the scene, helping pull the injured from the wreckage.
We drove up to the front and there was already a few Marines there as well. There's some quite close by, so it happened. So we basically, there was an officer already on the ground and he was telling us to clear the houses in the street in case of any secondary devices. So we just cordoned off the area and we were clearing some of the houses for all the people next door.
And you saw people lying in the rubble?
We went round to the back of the house where the explosion had been, and the back of the house had collapsed. There was a guy half in, half out of the rubble. There were already policemen trying to get him out, and one of his guy must have been living in the house with him. Was in a bit of a state of shock. He didn't appear to be too badly injured, though not obviously injured anyway.
The explosion, which happened around 4:30 this morning, could be heard for miles around, including at the Slim Lines barracks where we've been based for the last couple of days, which is about 2 miles away. The men of 4-5 Commando immediately threw a cordon around the scene, the target, the home of the Serb ambassador to Pristina. They dealt with injuries and have now handed over the investigation of the blast to the United Nations police. Minutes before the explosion, 3 people were seen running away from the scene by UN police officers who'd been guarding the area. Albanian extremists are suspected to have been behind the attack. The explosion served as a stark reminder to the international community of the crisis in Kosovo. At a hastily arranged press conference later that day, the head of the UN's mission in Kosovo condemned the bombing.
So, another time, we are together for bad news. Dark days are coming back.
These people were willing to take risk in getting to the target that they had chosen. They managed to evade the close security provided by the police in that area. And judging from the time at which the detonation itself took place, they were willing to put this thing on a very short fuse.
The commanding officer of 4-5 Commando sat listening intently. The bombing had happened on his patch. He had now to ensure there'd be no backlash against the Albanian population in Pristina.
As I have repeatedly said, Kosovo remains in crisis. The conflict between the communities is not over. We will not be dissuaded or deterred from our efforts to bring peace and security in Kosovo. And a peaceful Kosovo is a key to a peaceful Balkan.
In the hours following the bombing, extra troops were ordered onto the streets of Pristina as the search for the bombers was stepped up. Colonel Robison faced questioning about whether more could have been done to prevent the attack.
This particular bomb was a very determined operation by ruthless extremists who were quite determined to move in and conduct this operation. I think it's extremely difficult to deter and guarantee 100% if such people are so ruthless.
For many years before the conflict, Serb and Albanians lived happily as neighbours in the villages to the north of Pristina. But now intimidation and violence are rife. This disused railway line is a symbolic dividing line between on my left an Albanian village and on my right a Serbian village. This isn't an uncommon sight in northern Pristina, a rural area where the men of 4-5 Commando are used to ensure there's no intimidation on either side. This is the Zulu 4-5 observation post in the Serb village of Devic Jugovicia, where Marines are tasked with keeping rival factions apart. A daily patrol escorts children from their homes to school in a nearby village. It's a routine task for the highly trained men of 4-5 Commando, but nevertheless shows that nowhere can be considered completely safe, and danger can quite literally lie round any corner.
We've got 2 Serbian villages here that are neighbouring. There's about a 1.5 mile gap between them, and obviously the school's in the next village down. So what we provide is a school escort and making sure the kids get from one village to the other village safely and that.
What concerns might you have for their safety?
It's the Albanians intimidating them en route because you got the 1.5 mile gap. If we left them to their own devices, it's possible that they could drive by in cars, and it's just intimidation mainly.
As well as keeping the peace, 4-5 Commandos see their role in Pristina as trying to win the hearts and minds of the people, helping them to help themselves. The Marines, along with the charity War Child, have built 2 play parks in the city. Need I ask what sort of reaction have you had from the local community?
Yeah, it's very good. It is very good, and
yeah, it's great feedback for us because it's a very well used area, very well used park. The kids love it, and again, especially after school, you can't move in this place, which is heartwarming for us as well. Go! They've gone through traumatic times, and things are getting better, slowly but surely. And if we can generate the feeling that they can help themselves and build a better life for themselves, then, as far as I'm concerned, we're doing our job.
For many young Marines, Kosovo is their first tour of duty. Their training in the jungles of Belize and the Arctic wastes of northern Norway are a far cry from the role they play on the streets of Pristina.
Is this what you joined the Marines to do, or Kosovo, no, to be honest? But now you're here? Now I'm here, I've just got to crack on with it, and it is good experience, you know, can't hurt.
I expect to come here, but not at this present time. I want to come back. But it's first kicked off, hopefully. We're all ready to go, but didn't go at the time.
You find it all rewarding, what you're doing now, although you say
yeah,
it's boring?
you see them look at you, the kids and that, just not shake hands and things like that. It's really rewarding.
You've been away from home now for a while, that will be taking its toll a wee bit, is it?
Oh, 3 months now. I'm with my wee boy and that, yeah, he's getting bigger.
What do you think of Kosovo and the people itself? What's your impressions?
I think they're hard done to, they've had a hard life, but they're getting back on their feet now, so they're getting ready, getting life sorted and having back to normal.
4-5 Commando's tour of duty in Pristina comes to an end next March. They'll be replaced by another British regiment, but most accept it will be many years before NATO, the United Nations and the charity organisations will be able to leave the people of Kosovo to fend for themselves and live together in some sort of harmony. The worry is that the longer the troops and the aid workers stay, the more dependent on them the people will become. For 4-5 Commando, one of the most highly trained fighting units in the British Army, it's been a steep but valuable learning experience.
We've had a good reception from the people since we've been here. And I think that's because we are having a hands-on approach, getting into the street, actually talking to people, rather than just sort of patrolling around with the sort of hard approach that maybe sometimes people are associated with. But we're finding we're getting on well with the people, and it's having results.
Our time here has been quite fascinating, and we've covered a very broad spectrum. There's the military aspects of providing a safe and secure environment. We do that with patrolling, we do it with observation posts, and we do it with some static guards. And I think 4-5 have done considerably more than that. We've become very actively engaged with the local communities, Albanians and Serbs. We've got involved in community projects, we've got involved with charities and international organisations, and these sort of things, improving the quality of life when put alongside the military aspects of our role, altogether, I think it's fair to say we are making a substantial contribution to the development of Pristina and Kosovo, and it's something we're very proud of. And I hope at the end of our tour we can look back and say that Pristina is a better place than it was 6 months before that.
Although I see a spider